Sue Hamilton, Indian Philosophy. A very short introduction. Life's biggest questions often arrive in quiet moments. You might find yourself watching the sunset, stuck in traffic, or lying awake at night when they surface. What makes your thoughts and feelings real? Where does your consciousness end and the world begin? For thousands of years, people have explored these mysteries, but one tradition stands out in how deeply it mapped the territory of human awareness. This journey through Indian philosophy opens doors you might not expect. You'll discover how ancient thinkers turned abstract ideas into practical tools for understanding your own mind. As you explore their insights about consciousness, reality, and human potential, you'll gain new ways to think about your own experience. Their answers still resonate today, offering fresh perspectives on questions that modern science is just beginning to ask. Ready to see the world and yourself in a new light? Let's get started. Mapping the universe. In the vast landscape of human thought, there's a profound tradition that approaches life's biggest questions differently. Indian philosophy stands unique in how it weaves together what Western minds often keep separate: the quest for wisdom and the path to spiritual fulfillment. While Western thinkers since Kant have typically separated religious faith from philosophical reasoning, Indian philosophy takes a different approach. Schools like Advaita Vedanta and figures such as Shankara show how these two are inseparable parts of the same journey, both of which we'll explore in more detail later. Indian philosophers are not just seeking intellectual understanding. For example, the sages of the Upanishads and later thinkers like Nagarjuna pursued knowledge with a clear goal in mind: to transform their destiny and achieve liberation from the endless cycle of rebirth, and we'll delve into their contributions later as well. This brings us to karma and rebirth, two cornerstones of Indian thought that shape its entire philosophical landscape. Karma isn't simply what goes around comes around. It's a sophisticated understanding of how actions create consequences. Originally, this meant ritual actions performed by Brahmin priests, whose precise ceremonies were believed to maintain cosmic order. But by the 5th century before the Common Era, this understanding evolved to encompass all actions, with their effects potentially spanning multiple lifetimes. The Buddha would later revolutionize this concept by teaching that intention, not just action, was the key to karmic consequences. These Brahmins, who shaped so much of this tradition, trace their lineage to the Aryan people who made northern India their home. They created an incredible system of knowledge, written in sacred texts called the Vedas. Their world centered on sacrifice, detailed ceremonies they believed maintained the harmony of the cosmos. These rituals represented a complete view of how the universe worked, with properly performed ceremonies. The Brahmins maintained their position at the top of society because people believed their ritual purity kept these cosmic maintaining ceremonies effective. Yet within this world of external ritual, a remarkable shift took root. While some Brahmins focused on performing ceremonies, others turned their attention inward. These inner-focused thinkers developed the teachings found in the Upanishads. These texts introduced a revolutionary idea: your deepest self, or Atman, shares its nature with the universal essence, or Brahman. This teaching was more than just philosophy. It showed a path to freedom from rebirth through direct knowledge of this ultimate truth. This evolution of thought reveals something central about Indian philosophy. It transforms both understanding and experience of reality. Whether through precise ritual actions or deep insights into the nature of things, these thinkers aimed for practical results, breaking free from the cycle of rebirth and knowing the highest truth. But this wasn't the end of India's spiritual evolution. As the Brahmins continued their practices and developed their ideas, new questions arose that their traditional answers couldn't fully address. People began asking deeper questions about human suffering and the meaning of life. These questions would soon find new answers from an unexpected source: a privileged young man from a small kingdom whose search for truth would shake the foundations of Indian thought. Buddha's revolutionary path to awakening. Into this ritualistic world came someone who transformed Indian thought forever. Around 485 BC, Siddhartha Gautama was born to a wealthy family in what we now call Nepal. His life of comfort couldn't shield him from life's deepest questions. Why must we grow old? Why do we suffer? Can anyone escape these basic facts of being human? By his early 30s, these questions drove him to leave everything behind: his palace, his wealth, even his wife and newborn son. This young prince who slipped away in the night would eventually become known as the Buddha, the awakened one. He sought answers, studying with great teachers and testing harsh practices, but nothing satisfied his quest. Then he discovered something new: a form of meditation that led to 3 extraordinary discoveries. He saw his past lives and how actions shape future births. Most importantly, he found a way to break free from this endless cycle. These insights became the foundation of his teachings as the Buddha. He shared what he called the 4 Noble Truths, but took a completely different path than the Brahmin priests. His focus turned to understanding how we experience life itself. He taught that all human life carries dukkha, a term that encapsulates a deep sense that something's missing. This feeling comes from trying to hold on to things that can't last, like youth, good health, or even our closest relationships. The Buddha's most striking teachings centered on 2 ideas: how everything connects and how nothing stays the same. Unlike the Brahmin's view of an unchanging self linked to cosmic reality, he showed how our experiences build themselves moment by moment through the way our minds work. Everything we know, he said, depends on something else. You won't find anything that exists all by itself, unchanged. He created a balanced approach between extreme self-denial and complex rituals. His monastic community showed a middle way, balancing society and spiritual growth. This practical focus, combined with his penetrating philosophical insights, would go on to influence not just Buddhist thought, but the entire landscape of Indian philosophy, forcing other traditions to refine and defend their positions in response to his radical critiques. The Buddha's revolution touched something deeper than philosophy. He opened a path to freedom that anyone could walk, regardless of their social standing or ritual knowledge. By turning attention from abstract theories to direct experience, he changed how people would think about wisdom and truth for centuries to come. These ideas spread rapidly across northern India, challenging the established order. The Brahmin priests couldn't ignore this new way of thinking. Their response led to fascinating defenses, starting with a focus on language. From philosophy to tools for spiritual transformation, ancient India was seeing an explosion of intellectual creativity unlike anything before. As the Buddha's ideas spread across the land, thinkers and scholars began building sophisticated new systems of knowledge. What emerged would rank among the most remarkable achievements in human thought. The Brahmins began their response by looking deeply at language itself. They knew something crucial. Whoever could explain how sacred texts worked held the key to their meaning and power. A brilliant thinker named Panini stepped forward with an answer. He created a system of grammar so precise that scholars still marvel at it today. But this went far beyond organizing words. When you say something like, "water wets grain," Panini showed, you're speaking about how the whole universe works. From this focus on language grew new ways of proving what we can truly know. A school of thought called Nyaya, started by another thinker named Gautama, developed a clear 5-step path to solid knowledge. Picture yourself on a hillside, spotting smoke in the distance. Nyaya would guide your thinking. You see the smoke. You remember how smoke always goes with fire, like in your kitchen, so you can trust there's fire on that far hill. These weren't just thinking games, though. They showed how to know anything with certainty. As these ideas about knowledge grew, another school called Vaisheshika mapped out everything that exists. They found 7 basic building blocks of reality: substance, quality, action, universality, particularity, inherence, and absence. Take a red rose. It shows all these pieces at work. You have the rose itself, its redness, its blooming, what makes it rose-like, what makes it this exact rose, and how all these features come together as one thing. What made these developments particularly fascinating was their practical aim. The philosophers weren't just trying to win arguments. They wanted to prove, beyond any doubt, that spiritual freedom was real and achievable. By understanding these categories and methods of valid knowledge, you were engaging in a practice that could lead to spiritual transformation. From these intellectual foundations grew many branches of Indian thought. Some focused on understanding the nature of knowledge. Others turned toward exploring consciousness itself. As these ideas flowed through Indian society, they sparked something revolutionary: whole new ways of understanding the human mind and its potential. 2 remarkable traditions would step forward to map this inner territory in ways that would change how we think about consciousness forever. The bridge between thought, awareness, and liberation. While Buddhist thinkers explored the depths of emptiness and consciousness, other traditions developed their own powerful approaches to understanding reality. 2 systems in particular, yoga and Vedanta, created bridges between philosophical theory and spiritual practice that people still walk today. Yoga's origins stretch back to India's earliest spiritual seekers, who discovered that disciplined attention could reveal deeper truths about consciousness itself. By the time these practices were systematized in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, around the 3rd century CE, they had evolved far beyond physical exercises. These ancient practitioners had mapped the territory of human consciousness with remarkable precision, developing techniques to still what they called the modifications of the mind, the endless parade of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that usually dominate our awareness. Through yoga's careful methods, you can learn something remarkable about your own mind. When thoughts race through your head, when memories pull you backward or plans push you forward, you might think that's all there is. But yoga points to something deeper, a pure awareness that watches it all happen. This watching presence, called Purusha, stands apart from everything it observes, the world of Prakriti. Another tradition called Samkhya built a complete map of how this works. They saw reality as having two distinct sides, pure awareness on one hand and everything else on the other. Your thoughts, feelings, the chair you're sitting in, the farthest stars, all these belong to Prakriti. Your true self, they said, simply watches, eternally free and untouched. Finding freedom means seeing this difference clearly. Then came Shankara, a brilliant thinker who turned everything upside down. His tradition, Advaita Vedanta, said reality isn't split in two. It's all one thing, pure consciousness existence called Brahman. Picture walking at twilight and seeing what looks like a snake on the path. Your heart races until you look closer. It's just a rope. The snake wasn't exactly unreal. You really saw it. But understanding its true nature changes everything. Shankara said the whole world works like this. It's real, but not in the way we usually think. Other Vedantic philosophers like Ramanuja suggested a middle way. His view, called qualified non-dualism, saw reality as one fabric woven from many threads. Yes, everything connects in one great unity, but the distinctions we see still matter, just as red and blue threads keep their colors in a tapestry. These weren't just clever ideas for debate. Each tradition offered a different map to freedom, a distinct way of seeing yourself and your place in the universe. As these ideas moved beyond India's borders, they took root in new soil. Buddhism flowered across Asia, while Vedantic wisdom found new audiences in distant lands. One moment stands out in this journey, when a young monk stepped onto a stage in Chicago in 1893, bringing these ancient insights to the modern world. The living breath of Indian philosophy. On September 11, 1893, a young Indian monk in orange robes stood before thousands at Chicago's World Parliament of Religions. When Swami Vivekananda addressed the crowd with the words, "Sisters and Brothers of America," he received a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. No one expected this voice from the East to make ancient Indian wisdom feel so alive, so relevant to everyone. That day changed how the West would see Indian philosophy. Rather than an exotic curiosity, Indian philosophy began to be seen as a sophisticated tradition with insights into consciousness and human potential. This moment sparked a new chapter in Indian philosophy's long story. You can see its influence everywhere today, though often in unexpected forms. Walk into any major university, and you'll find students studying ancient Indian texts, right alongside Plato and Kant. Step into almost any neighborhood in the world, and you'll probably find a yoga studio, even if many students don't know about yoga's deep philosophical roots. This modern flowering of Indian thought started in an interesting way. When Western scholars first began learning Sanskrit and reading India's ancient texts in the 1800s, something unexpected happened. Indians themselves began looking at their philosophical heritage with fresh eyes. Some traditions found special success in this new world, particularly Shankara's teachings about the ultimate unity of all things, which Vivekananda presented so powerfully in Chicago. Today, Indian philosophy travels two paths. In universities, scholars use modern tools to study these ancient ideas, showing they're every bit as rigorous as Western philosophy. This work helps break down old myths about Eastern thought being purely mystical. Meanwhile, traditional schools in India keep teaching these ideas the old way, focusing on how they can transform your life. But here's the thing. This split between thinking and practice is new. As we mentioned earlier, the original Indian philosophers saw no gap between careful reasoning and the search for spiritual freedom. Maybe that's the big challenge, and the big opportunity. For Indian philosophy today, showing how these ideas can be both intellectually deep and life-changing. These traditions speak powerfully to modern questions, especially about consciousness, something science is just beginning to explore. Their careful studies of meditation, how we perceive things, and the nature of awareness offer fresh angles on age-old mysteries. What watches your thoughts? How does your consciousness connect to the world? What does true freedom feel like? As we keep asking these questions, Indian philosophy lights up new paths to understanding ourselves. In this Blink to Indian Philosophy by Sue Hamilton, you've learned that Indian philosophy offers a profound map of human consciousness, weaving together intellectual rigor and spiritual transformation in ways that still illuminate our deepest questions today. The journey began with Brahmins, whose rituals evolved into theories of reality. The Buddha revolutionized this by focusing on direct experience, sparking new ideas. Brahmins responded with tools for language, logic, and understanding reality. Yoga and Vedanta then developed practical methods for exploring consciousness and human freedom. Vivekananda brought these ideas to the modern world, igniting a global conversation. Whether studied in universities or traditional schools, these insights offer fresh perspectives on consciousness and human potential.